Glance Technologies owns and operates Glance Pay, a disruptive mobile payment technology now live in 16 cities in Canada and about to launch in the US. With revenues up 664% in the last quarter, Glance Technologies has the potential to be a worldwide leader in an industry projected to grow to $1.3 trillion in 3 years. Glance Technologies stock symbols are GLNFF in the US and GET in Canada. Find out more at glancepay.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is market historian Bob Hoye. He's the chief investment strategist for InstitutionalAdvisors.com. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Yeah, hi, Jim. Here we are. Here we go again.
Canada did a good job of creating jobs in December. They thought maybe 1,000 new jobs would be created. Instead, we saw 78,000 new jobs. The U.S. also created a lot of new jobs, not as many as expected, but still 148,000. Are the economies in Canada and the U.S. healthy right now?
Yeah, they've been moving well. We should go back to the crash that ended in 2009, which was the worst calamity since the 1930s. And the recovery out of that it's now lengthy, but most of it was rather weak. And of course, the Republicans are going on about the 8 years of the Obama administration not once hitting a 3% GDP growth rate. Yeah, there were, when you had the most anti-business administration probably in U.S. history, things are not going to be too dynamic. Money was going out of the country because of predatory government habits in the U.S. And so with the Trump election, which, by the way, I still emphasize that it is the consequence of another popular uprising where people get fed up with in-your-face and in-your-pocket governments. So, and Trump just happened to be the leader, and it's turning out to be quite a battle, but the reform movement is winning. I saw one the other day whereby for each new regulation that came in, they've dropped about 16 old ones. And I think Trump had an idea that for each new regulation passed, they'd have to get rid of 2. So there's been an abrupt change there. So anyways, the animated spirits are back, and you had uncertainty going into the election in 2016, early November. Market got oversold because in our technical stuff we got a springboard buy on November the 3rd, which was actually before the election. And then the whole thing exploded. People began to realize that, hey, this could become the most pro-business administration, at least since Calvin Coolidge in the 1920s. So, which is a good thing. So, anyways, this is the reduction of regulations and the reduction of influence of government. And then with this tax reform, the companies will always go to a friendlier tax regime, or not necessarily a tax regime, but a country that's friendly to capital formation and investments and everybody trying to do a good job. So I think this positive swell started to appear last summer, and then now more realistic. So I think it is genuine expansion in both Canada and the U.S. Unemployment numbers are always weird, and I'd rather not even discuss them, but the economy's become quite dynamic, and the question is how long can that run? and in this case, the stock market still is a discounting mechanism, and it's going up for valid reasons. The economy is actually improving, so we'll just monitor it, see how well it does. The things that should also be mentioned, Jim, are that the markets have become highly speculative. Valuations are now, I think, a bit uncertain. We've always rested on the one where you take the average wage in the U.S. and divide it into the S&P, and it's exceptionally high, but who knows what earnings may do if you get, a repatriation of money out of other countries and back into the U.S. That money is going to be employed in a more creative way than just parking it elsewhere or having governments dominate things within the U.S. So there's some creativity being unleashed. So, but we would just say it's happening. And this is now a very long expansion since 2009, but you have a sudden step towards economic sense with the reform that's going on. And while the taxes were not reduced for everybody, but it is a significant drop in the rate of taxation overall, and this then is putting less money into the stultifying hands of government and allowing more money to stay on the private side where decision making will be much wiser. So it's fun to watch, Jim.
Well, yes, not everybody won with the new U.S. tax bill. Morgan Stanley, a $1.25 billion hit. You said Goldman Sachs also took a hit. What's your feeling on that?
Well, there was a sort of a nexus developed up between Democrats, of all things, and Hillary Clinton and Wall Street. And Wall Street looked at the Democrat side and felt that their continued intrusion in the economy would be a positive. And they generally funded the Democrats. Well, it didn't work out. So, but I think Wall Street had too much going for them, an unfair advantage on that side where they were able to influence regulatory determinations. So, without being a detailed expert on it, I don't mind if Wall Street is not making as much money in the way that it had been. If you're in an ordinary bull market and there's underwritings being done, that's fine. In an ordinary bull market, you got commissions being done, and that's fine too. So, but for those big firms that were strong supporters of the Democrats, too bad. I don't mind at all seeing them take a hit.
We'll have more with Bob Hoye right after the break.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. A work program is planned for our Finland property that contains diamond-bearing kimberlite. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ADD, and the Frankfurt Exchange, symbol 82A1. Please visit our website at arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Hoye. Bob, the Canadian dollar above 80 cents U.S., is that going to stick around for long?
Yeah, it looks, it's moving for the right reasons. And, you know, you can often get a low for base metal prices in November, December, and this time it was the 1st of December. You can also often get a low for crude oil prices in January, but that has not been seen yet. So, but generally out of November, we figured that industrial commodity prices could improve. And with that, the Canadian dollar would improve, and it has been happening. So I looked at it yesterday, and yeah, it's in a favorable trend, and it can continue for some months yet. It's due to, of course, firming economy with firming up industrial commodities. The idiocies that's going on in Ottawa with when Trudeau went down, and I guess it was November, went down to visit White House on NAFTA trade. He didn't want to discuss trade. He wanted to discuss human rights. And then the same disappointment happened when he goes off to visit the people in China. And that just brought an end to the discussion right there. But if you're going to discuss trade. But don't go leveraging your own personal political ambitions. The audacity of this guy, the Prime Minister of Canada, to force his current emotions about human rights on the Americans or on the Chinese. I mean, the week that he went to the U.S., the head of the stories about his view was on something called toxic masculinity. And he's going down to talk free trade? I think Ottawa's gone loopy again, but nonetheless, with better industrial commodity prices, the Canadian dollar will be firmer. And hopefully it keeps going. I like to see a firmer Canadian dollar. It shows that at least net of something, the country is doing better.
Despite the government.
Despite the government, yeah.
We'll have more with Bob Hoye right after this.
I'm Brian Fowler, president of Blind Creek Resources Limited, listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, ticker symbol BCK. Blind Creek is focused in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. The company's key property is the Blend Project, one of the largest undeveloped lead-zinc-silver deposits in Western Canada, plus plans to advance the recently acquired, fully permitted historic Engineer Gold Mine in the Atlan District of Northwestern BC. Check us out at blindcreekresources.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Hoye. Bob Hoye, Canada is the coldest country on Earth, and we have carbon taxes when we have a huge wealth in all kinds of carbon-based fuels. Is that a bad move?
Oh, carbon tax. They dress it up as doing something for the environment, for climate, but actually carbon dioxide has very, very little to do with real climate change. The climate was changing for millions and hundreds of millions of years, and carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere were much higher than now, when it was cooler than now and warmer than now. I mean, it really has very little to do with it. And the reason why it's become an issue here over the last 40 years is that it's a way of blaming modern society for an issue that has been invented. So, and the way to get through to it is, as many people have pointed out, what is the remedy for the perceived imperfection in climate? Oh, more regulation, more taxes. That tells you all you need to know about it. But this decline in temperatures from, say, the Rocky Mountains east is a pretty cold hit. But at the same, a number of weeks ago, when it was milder in North America, there was a plunge of cold air down into Siberia. So it was out of the Arctic, and it has to do with the jet stream looping down. So the Danish Meteorological Office keeps a chart of the temperature done by satellite of the Arctic, like north of 80 degrees north latitude. And it spent the summer at below the mean curve, and the early part of the fall below the mean curve. But for about the last 40 days, it's been in a sideways trend, well above the mean. So we did a study on that, put out a piece on it just the other day, and the question was, what's going to happen when that curve returns to the mean? And everything eventually goes back to the mean. And so the questions we had were that perhaps with about 40 days of temperatures in the far north being slightly warmer than normal, maybe there's still some lingering warmth from the El Nino, which peaked in 2016. The authorities have yet to declare that its opposite, La Nina, has yet to start. But then I looked at the last few days on the Danish Met Office temperature chart of north, and it's starting to plunge again. So who knows? But the through the summer and in the fall, there were reports from the southern hemisphere, which was in our summer, which was their winter, and places in Australia or South Africa were getting some unusual cold. And then this has continued now, where they're into summer in the southern hemisphere, and they're still getting reports of unusual cold. So now, at the moment, they're unusual weather reports. But then, of course, climate is the sum of weather over a long period of time. So, but the main thing we're looking at here is that the solar minimum is still on, and we're down to sunspot count on the monthly down to about 8, which is low. The number of days of no sunspots at all is up to about 28% for all of 2017, compared to, I think, about 10% for the previous year. So the solar minimum was forecast, and the solar minimum is on, and throughout all of history, you've had lower temperatures, cooling trends, let's call them climatic cooling trends, with a solar minimum. So, and of course I've mentioned before, the mechanism here is that when you're in low solar activity, the magnetic field of the Earth diminishes. That allows more cosmic rays through, and more cosmic rays prompt more precipitation and more clouds, which has a cooling effect. I like the story. I thought it was a good one. So anyways, we're getting a heads up on what could be a longer trend of cooling this winter. And on December 29th, Mechanics Illustrated, of all things, came out with a headline that this cold spell is due to global warming. They actually put it in, this is due to global warming, and the rationalization is getting really weird. And I figure some day soon, as this coolness lasts, and it looks like it's going to last through the winter, it could be a cooler than normal winter, the public's going to say, hey, where is your global warming? Where's the story? And this is where the promoters are having to come out with it already, that, it's cold out there. They have to admit that. And then they still have to explain it in terms that it's due to global warming. I mean, the other day Al Gore came out with one much similar to that, and referred to Michael Mann, who was the guy that created the bogus hockey stick chart of historical temperatures over the last 1,000 years, and he was assuring people that the cold is due to global warming. So, hey, I have a high regard for the laws of physics, and this is complete bogus nonsense. It's trying to keep one of the biggest promotions in history going. So it could be, the cold can continue for some weeks yet.
Well, too, when it comes to carbon footprint, Canada accounts for 1% or less of the total Earth carbon imprint. So what difference does it make if we have carbon taxes or not if the U.S. and China and India don't do it?
That's right. It'll make no difference at all. And the only reason why they're pushing hard for it is they see it as a source of revenues. That's all about it. It's money and power is what it's all about. Because they go back to the early 70s, the big pitch was global cooling. And it was cooling at that time because the 1930s and 40s, if you take a 25-year span there, was the warmest in 1,000 years. So the game, that one, they couldn't find that blame society on it. So then when it's the early 70s cooling ended and then you went on to another warming bit, then the very crafty promoters got onto it, and it became a source of funding of grants. You can dream up a story and get paid for it. Now that's whether you're in science or a journalist or a writer at a newspaper. Just dream up a story about what global warming is going to do, and you can get published and you can earn a salary. So a lot of it is that, and the amount of money that they're extorting out of the system is staggering. Billions and billions a year on climate promotion, which money could otherwise go into, fixing roads or bridges. But hey, it's going into promoting a bogus story. Now, Jim, here's the wrap on this, is that the promoters of global warming have a notion that they know that they can create the perfect climate. Now, we want to go back not so far in history, in the early 1900s, when the promoters started with communism. And their objective was to create the perfect man, the man who would fit the dictatorship. And as it went on, they only murdered 100 million people in trying to create the perfect man. But I see similarities, this perfection that they can drive to create the perfect climate. I mean, it's bizarre. And I think, fortunately, I think it's going to come to an end because the sun is telling us that the forcing is now towards cooling and no longer forcing heating as it was until through the 60s to the 90s. The climate is indeed changing, and it is changing from unusual warmth to now a flat trend, maybe 19 years now with no real advance in the overall temperature. The peak up in 2016 was due to an El Nino, which was a weather event, and we're just now, as I said earlier, we're getting out of the El Nino event, but not yet into the more localized or more short-term cooling called the La Nina. So it's going to be interesting this winter.
Well, I've yet to have a politician explain how carbon taxes can control sunspots and volcanic eruptions.
Jim, that is very good. You have a practical mind on this one.
Bob, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Good fun. Thanks a lot, and we'll look forward to talking next week.
My guest has been market historian Bob Hoye. He's the chief investment strategist for institutionaladvisors.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. You can forward questions to Bob or any other guests to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.